first time I read Dune, I was in college, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't quite understand it. I was a little too young at that time to really get it and what it was trying to say. But as I've gotten older and more mature, I've found that it resonates with me a lot more as an adult, with its political stances, its ideologies, analogies to climate change, and also a personal connection to the plight of the Fremen. I think most people in today's day and age can connect more with the plight of the Fremen than they can with Paul Atreides. It's also very distinctive as a sci-fi series, as compared to something very corporate and mainstream like Star Wars or Star Trek, which makes it the more interesting sci-fi universe for me to explore.
Its lack of market saturation, for now, is also a feeling of freshness to this material. I'm sick of space wizards and lightsabers. And for every Star Wars fan out there that's watching this at this moment, just remember, Dune did it first. For everybody out there that thinks that a space worm king is silly, just think of Jabba the Hutt. We're reaching a point where the political world and the ecological world are directly synchronous with the themes and concepts within the story. WB and HBO taking a risk on huge budget, multi-film series with spin-offs at this level shows that their market research is asking for this void to be filled for the mass audience instead of for more niche audiences that went to see the David Lynch version or fans from when it was only a trilogy of novels. As much as I adore the Dune series, there are topics that will be cut entirely or not addressed at all within the new 2.5-hour film, specifically regarding themes of philosophy and also the overall philosophies of its creator, Frank Herbert. It is worth us taking the time to dive into these themes and these ideas at length so you, the viewer, can go into the cinematic experience with the full context of
The entirety of the Dune saga, at least the first 6 novels, revolve around the central theme: mankind trying to best nature through scientific methods. The ties in with political aspects of the story create a minimalist versus maximalist dynamic. The Fremen live in a state of near-complete poverty while being guided by their faith. Meanwhile, the foreign powers of the great house of Landsred continue to pillage the planet for resources to live a very maximalist lifestyle. The Fremen must recycle their own water and food supply while the upper-class invaders bluntly discard water with little thought. Life on Arrakis would be difficult regardless. There is no question about that at all. Yet, it is never addressed why more water is never shipped to the planet to comfort and assist the indigenous population. Water haulers or asteroid mining could easily supplement the lack of water upon the planet, but by doing so would give the Fremen a greater sense of purpose in the political stratosphere and remove the desperation of the population. The rich powers that be do not want a mass of people that can always live in comfort. Water is considered currency upon Arrakis, down to the point where dead bodies are recycled for new water supplies. There is no precipitation, at least in the first novel of Dune. Water must be recycled through the use of still suits that absorb the urine, sweat, feces, and water droplets of breath in order to continuously maintain all of the population. It is a harsh and painful lifestyle guided only by the blind faith of a savior that may one day come to rescue them from the invaders. In our own world, fresh water is becoming harder and harder to come by. Poor, impoverished areas of our world view water as a treasure, while the average person can easily turn on a tap and fill a glass without a second thought. However, even this has become a problem with devastating environmental mining, such as fracking, emitting lethal amounts of natural gas into the water table, polluting the land and water supply. There are areas in the United States right now where water can be set on fire. but it is all in service of the greater cause of the economic growth. Like in Dune, we shrug off the effects of environmental devastation and ignore the pleas of the populace because to be rich, it's a right to have water. As the CEO of Nestle, Peter Brackbeth-Lethman, once said, "The one opinion, which I think is extreme, is represented by the NGOs who bang on about declaring water as a public right. That means that as a human being, you should have the right to water. That's an extreme solution. The other view says that water is a foodstuff like any other, and like any other foodstuff, we should have a market value on it."
Throughout the first two books, Paul Atreides is stricken with visions of not just one future, but many paths of the future. Due to genetic manipulation, training, and the use of the spice melange, Paul grows in mental strength, becoming a near omniscient character capable of seeing the many paths of the future laid out before him. By knowing the future, he becomes the Kwisatz Haderach, which is a Chicopso word meaning shortening of the way. Paul, however, knowing the future, could choose to avert it if necessary, which brings in the concept of free will versus determinism. Many films, novels, and science fiction short stories by the likes of Philip K. Dick, H.G. Wells, and Ray Bradbury tackle this very concept. If you know your future, or just the future in general, are you affecting its path, or are you merely moving with it? Paul is never certain if he is making the right decision, and that he is unsure if his knowing the future is truly changing it. The science fiction series Devs delves into this very concept. The multiple paths we take as individuals, the butterfly effect, the chaos theory, all of which affect our very understanding of our place in space and time itself.
You have a choice. Walk away. Do it now.
I can't. I have to know. I have to find out what happened in my life.
Please.
First, let's continue our vocabulary lesson. Kwisatz Haderach is a title for the, at that time unknown, person that would assume the ultimate prescient powers. This was, however, no accident of nature. The Bene Gesserit, who can kind of be explained as what if the Catholic Church was all psychic women, and also have been running a long con across the entire galaxy to genetically engineer a human deity. That's right, psychic space witches have been attempting to engineer a god through genetic manipulation, with royal marriages, and all through the use of the spice melange. Spice unlocks genetic memory, which we will touch on later. However, the XX chromosomes of the Bene Gesserit make them unable to access the paternal memories even with the use of the spice. Men in this story do not have that disadvantage. We now know that the second X chromosome is passed down biologically by the father, and this mechanic doesn't really make scientific sense today. But it aids the story in leading to one of the first twists. Paul Atreides, a male, would become the Kwisatz Haderach, much to the dismay of the Bene Gesserit order. They were, of course, hoping for a female goddess they could control and use that to transcend humanity entirely. The Fremen Jihad is the point in Dune where the subtext becomes text. At its core, the Dune saga is about the wild, uncontrollable nature of man, how we resist and eventually fall to greater powers. The arrival of the chosen one trope tips the scales back towards the people taking back control of their lives, and to leading back to taking back House Atreides. The Fremen Jihad was at its heart a pure expression of this core idea. However, as the story progresses, the trappings of good and evil slip away, and the chosen one trope is turned on its head. The Fremen Jihad twists from an act of moral good into an act of unspeakable evil, as Herbert reveals through the story that good and evil as a metaphor isn't apt for societies of this size. The wild, uncontrollable nature of man is like a raging river. It brings life-giving water, and it destroys without thought or question. Leto II wrote this about his father, Paul, and the jihad. Quote, "Statistics at a conservative estimate, I have killed 61 billion, sterilized 90 planets, and completely demoralized 500 others. I have wiped out the followers of 40 religions," unquote. These are the fucking good guys in our story about space magic sand. Hopefully by now you're starting to see the greater lessons held in Dune as we examine the characters and actions within. The blind faith of the Fremen and their new leader Paul, starting as an act to regain control, spun out of wanting to manipulate and control the entire galaxy, enforcing their own dogma on others in the pursuit of their own freedom. That should sound familiar based on current real-world socio-political climates. Even the more popular Space Set series has toyed with the same exact ideas. Say what you will about The Last Jedi, but it was the first Star Wars film to expressly ask the question, are we actually the good guys? Or is the system just too big, and too messy to support a standard binary morality system? The boundaries between good and evil will always be set in a gray setting. That is the point of human realism.
Lesson 2. Now that they're extinct, the Jedi are romanticized, deified. But if you strip away the myth and look at their deeds, the legacy of the Jedi is failure, hypocrisy, hubris.
That's not true.
At the height of their powers, they allowed Darth Sidious to rise, create the Empire, and wipe them out. It was a Jedi Master who was responsible for the training and creation of Darth Vader.
We've learned almost nothing from this cautionary tale about controlling groups and managing resources. Or maybe some of us have learned, and the people equipped to do something about it reject it outright.
I believe the climate is changing. I believe some of it is naturally occurring, but some of it is caused by man-made activity. The question is how we address it in a thoughtful way that doesn't compromise economic growth, it affects the affordability of energy or American jobs.
We live in a world that is visibly dying, and our pursuit of more machines and more power are at the heart of the rejection of care for our planet. Those of us that fall into the Fremen category, the poor and the weak, are not even the cause of the majority of the Earth's climate issues. And yet, we are the ones doing the most to resolve it in any little way we can. Well, the most compared to the corporations that create 70% of the waste killing our planet. We're even seeing a Dune-like rejection of technology, something that was part of the setup for the Dune series that directly led to the Fremen.
Based on the recommendation of the independent bipartisan U.S. International Trade Commission, I am taking action to impose safeguard tariffs on imported residential washing machines and all solar products. My administration is committed to defending American companies, and they've been very badly hurt.
As the need for oil has increased due to growth in human population, we find society at a crossroads. Do we expand the use of non-fossil fuel technology or continue down the same self-destructive path? The correct answer is that we give up fossil fuels in order to save our planet. However, we continue to promise a movement into renewable energy while continuing to pump toxins into the atmosphere because it is crucial for our economic stability. Our climate has increased in temperature intensely since the 1970s, and it shows no signs of slowing down. At the time of this video's production, it is October of 2021, yet it is currently over 70 degrees outside almost every day. Our benevolent leaders continue to promise a solution, yet no one has been able to fulfill said promise.
Because we are now running out of gas and oil, we must prepare quickly for a third change, to strict conservation, and to the renewed use of coal, and to permanent renewable energy sources like solar power.
The budget plan I submit to you on February 8th will realize major savings by dismantling the Departments of Energy and Education and by eliminating ineffective subsidies for business.
And people who've devoted their lives to creating a cleaner and safer environment. And I've invited you here today to make a point With the leadership assembled in this room, we can break the stalemate that has hindered progress on clean air for the past decade. And with the minds, the energy, the talent assembled here, we can find a solution.
We faced urgent environmental and economic challenges that demand a new way of thinking and a new way of organizing our efforts here in the White House and in the national government. This office represents, in action, our commitment to confront these challenges in a new, more effective way, recognizing the connection between environmental protection and economic growth and our responsibility to provide real leadership on global environmental issues.
So tonight I announce the Advanced Energy Initiative, a 22% increase in clean energy research at the Department of Energy to push for breakthroughs in two vital areas. To change how we power our homes and offices, we will invest more in zero-emission coal-fired plants, revolutionary solar and wind technologies, and clean, safe nuclear energy.
This has been a team effort to make sure that we are doing everything we can to boost the energy efficiency of the American economy. And since we've said it's important, we thought it was important for us to lead by example here at the federal government.
Hillary wanted to put up wind. If you have a windmill anywhere near your house, congratulations. Your house just went down 75% in value. And they say the noise causes cancer. You told me that one, okay? You know, the thing makes it so... And of course, it's like a graveyard for birds.
We're going to invest $1.7 trillion in securing our future so that by 2050, the United States will be 100% clean energy economy with net zero emissions.
Before shamefully exiting the office of the presidency of the United States in January of 2021, the political administration of Donald Trump did something truly and utterly hypocritical. They signed a deal with the Taliban to ensure the full removal of American armed forces from the Afghan province and hand over political control of the nation to the Taliban. The Trump administration had no idea of the sheer consequences this would have on the people of that nation. Afghanistan is referred to as the graveyard of empires, since every major political body that has attempted to capture and claim the nation for themselves has failed, from the Mongols to the British to the Soviets to America itself. The Taliban have never hidden their intentions within politics. Institute a militaristic regime based upon fundamentalist teachings of Islam. Does this sound familiar? Religion becoming the government is by no means a new concept. Throughout all human history, greed and power have dominated societal control. What better way to gain that than through religion? Leaders in both America and abroad have used this tactic countless times, and there's still no end in sight. The situation in Afghanistan, as of this filming, is dire at best, and there is very little that can be done about it. The war in Afghanistan was one of the greatest political disasters in American foreign policy history since Vietnam, and the parallels between the two are uncanny. Like the Fremen Uprising and the following Fremen Jihad, the death toll is staggering. Dune has become no longer an analysis of what the future could be, but is now nostalgic for a time when we were looking towards the future. We are living in a Dune-shaped world now.
While the spice melange is used for interstellar travel, it is also a geriatric drug used to expand consciousness and increase the human lifespan. It's found only on a single planet, meaning that it is the most precious material throughout the universe. However, once a person uses spice, it becomes addictive and withdrawal is lethal. It also tastes like cinnamon, and bits of it are everywhere and in everything on Arrakis. Herbert was attempting to use this spice as a metaphor for the drug use of the 1960s and 70s, when mind-altering substances such as psilocybin mushrooms, marijuana, and LSD were influencing the new generation, giving them a new perspective upon the world. Jodorowsky's Dune attempted to go all in with this angle before it was abruptly canceled. Even so, the real-world spice of magic mushrooms has in recent years been extensively studied and proven to be effective in curing depression, increasing positive emotions, and encouraging empathy in its users. The mind-altering substances of the real world may not hold financial currency like the spice does in Dune, but the emotional impact can be nearly the same, even going so far to where users have laid claim to seeing God in visions. The fact that spice creates mutations as well as the space navigators and the God Emperor himself also gives rise to nods towards trans and non-binary individuals, using mind-altering substances to physically change you into a completely different living being. The Dune saga, while it has many real-world connections, also has very questionable ethics from time to time. Every narrative is a product of their time period, and while some age better than others, Dune is not immune to criticism. Frank Herbert, through much of his life, had a fairly anti-homosexual stance, claiming that the reason homosexual individuals were portrayed in a negative light in his work was due to the fact that they refused to propagate the human race, which is fundamentally untrue and incorrect.
Yet you have chosen to cast token gay characters in a negative light. The images that you present in your popular work, Dune, and its movie specifically, can only
I didn't do the movie, you understand that.
Can only promote bigotry and violence against lesbians and gay men. And
of course,
science.
What I was doing with the with the gay population there, I was only saying one thing. I was saying that that homosexuality is a natural occurrence in our society. In your teens, you're naturally this way, and some people are beyond. And primitive societies have dealt with it in a different way than our society deals with it. And lots of times we create the aberrant gay, and there are aberrant gays just as there are aberrant other individuals, by our social reactions to them. And I just gave you an aberrant gay in the Dune books. But what I was also saying to you was that sadomasochism sometimes is a part of this. I can give you chapter and verse on that. And that gays have a much harder problem coming out of the social pressures than the rest of us do in many instances. But I didn't have anything else in mind with this. That was what I was doing.
Well, I hope that in the future that you portray in any books that you do write in the future do in fact
well, there's another thing I was saying.
Responsibly represent lesbians and gays in a manner consistent with your non-lesbian, non-gay characters.
Well, another thing I was saying is that gays have opted to not continue the species.
The series also introduces the concept of genetic memory, which has in recent years gained much of its popularity through the Assassin's Creed game series. The idea that human memories, all the way up to an individual's death, are stored within the DNA chain of a person leads to the creation of Golas, clones of a sort created by the Tleilaxu. This leads to characters such as Duncan Idaho, Leto Atreides, and even Paul himself returning for later novels to continue their stories. As a general science fiction concept, this allows a writer to kill off a character and then manipulate the later version as needed for the story progression. Just popping in for a second, speaking of Frank Herbert being behind the curve on certain social issues, genetic memory is racist garbage. It's like absolutely fucking bunk. As mentioned when we were talking about the Kwisatz Haderach, Dune explores this idea in depth as it's the source of the powers unlocked by spice. They posit that your actual memories are stored in your DNA and passed on through your chromosomes and can be unlocked through the use of spice. Then they add in genetic selection and future sight and those things getting unlocked, allowing the best users of these powers to see the past, present, and future all at once. In our real world, however, genetic memory has been used to incite terrible racist scientific practices. Scientific racism has led to the populations of black men being given STDs for research, preventing black women from receiving painkillers and anesthesia for surgery on the basis that they don't feel things the way white women feel them, and was even touted as one of the reasons why enslaving minorities was okay. They're less than us. We're actually giving them a better life. Scientific racism quickly grabbed on to the genetic memory idea, citing it as the reason that black people continue to be oppressed after being gifted their freedoms. Their genetic memories enticing them to remain slaves. It's bullshit. All of that's very fucked up and racist. Not only that, but these beliefs were in full swing back when Frank Herbert was writing Dune. Now, am I saying that Frank Herbert was a racist? Yeah, actually, I am. I don't think he knew he was, and I don't think his use of Islam and genetic memory were even malicious. But you can still be racist even with the best intentions. And these ideas still trickle into society now. Born this way ideology gets thrown at every single minority to this day and stems from our racist science books teaching us about genetic memory. Now, I know. But then how do animals instinctively know how to do anything? You scream into your phone or monitor. The short answer is we don't entirely know yet. We know that DNA is passed and it informs the body on how to develop a brain that has evolved to do specific survival tasks. Some things still need to be taught and other things are instinctual. And lacking these abilities usually gets something killed off too quickly to be passed on. That's the simple version of what we know about genetic memory at this point.
As far as the Dune series is concerned, it continues to this very day. There are still more comics, video games, more novels coming out from Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson that expand the universe in the form of prequels, sidequels, interquels, and sequels. They're not bad, they just continue the universe. They're more Dune if you need more Dune. I would say that some of them are worth it. The prequels of the Butlerian Jihad are okay, even if they're not completely in line with the original intentions of Brian Herbert's father, Frank. In terms of the political stances and analogies to climate change, all of the politics of the entire series, they will always have a place in our world. They will always resonate. It's never going to change. These books will always be around. The original 6 Dune novels will always have a place in our world. The prequels and side stories, they may come and go, but the original 6 by Frank Herbert will always have relevance. I don't need to rehash all the things that we've said. You can just go back and rewind the video and watch everything that we just did. All this has happened before, and all of this will happen again. Like the Dune universe, it's a cycle. Everything is cyclical. And to close it all out, I will leave you with this quote. Deep in the human unconscious is a pervasive need for a logical universe that makes sense. But the real universe is always one step beyond logic.